Welcome back. A group of Senate Republicans are demanding a crackdown on asylum claims at the southern border in exchange for Ukraine and Israel funding. The one-page proposal put forward by a group of Republican senators, including James Lankford, Lindsey Graham, and Tom Cotton, represents the opening bid in negotiations with Senate Democrats and the White House.
President Biden requesting this $106 billion in supplemental aid for Israel and Ukraine put together again, but has signaled an openness to working with Republicans on the border. This coming a week after the GOP-controlled House passed its own bill providing more than $14 billion for Israel alone, leaving out funding for Ukraine, Taiwan, and other parts of the Biden proposal. Oklahoma Senator James Lankford sits on the Senate Homeland Security Committee. Joins us now. Senator, good to see you. Have you heard anything back from Senate Democrats or possibly the White House, again, regarding the demands, again, of what was put forward by the House and what was passed by the House, again, getting that aid to Israel immediately and then going towards Ukraine? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, several things there. Yes, we definitely work with the White House and with other Senate Democrats and made just a simple statement to them. President Biden wants to do national security things, but ignore what's happening on our southern border. We're not going to do that. If we're talking about national security items, one of the key areas of vulnerability for the United States is our own southern border and how open it is. 2.5 million people that have crossed that we know of this year, 1.5 million people that have crossed what they call gotaways in the last 3 years. We have no idea who they are and what they're doing. So this is an obvious area of vulnerability. Everybody sees it. The administration's asked for more money for the border to be able to process people faster in, and we've just said no. We will sit down with you and talk about what we're going to do on actual border security and actually changing the direction of where we're going, not just trying to be able to patch a bad problem.
Is there a set dollar amount that you believe would actually secure the U.S. southern border?
So it's actually not dollars that are going to secure the border. It's policy changes. We've got to handle the way we do asylum. That's got to be dramatically different. Just give you, for instance, 10 years ago, we had 21,000 people a year that would cross our southern border asking for asylum. 21,000 a year. We now have that every 3 days. So we've got to close the loophole that's being exploited by cartels and is being allowed by this administration. We've got to change how we handle asylum, how we do the screening process for asylum, so we're not just doing catch and release and screening people and then sending them into the country and saying, we'll give you a hearing in 4 or 5 years. We've got to know who's actually coming in, not just releasing people that we have no idea. I'm a proponent of legal immigration, but I'm adamantly opposed to illegal immigration, and it's just been allowed to be unchecked.
Senator Mayorkas, again, head of the DHS, continues his visits to Capitol Hill under oath. In each testimony seemingly not providing the answers that are being sought, specifics that you were pointing out to. Is there a frustration there amongst the Republican Party or with you in terms of the lack of information being shared there with several different committees in terms of Secretary Mayorkas? Is he doing his job?
He's been extremely vague. He and I have had lots of conversations off camera, and then last week he was in front of my committee, actually, and I just walked through, do we need a change in asylum? Will we have any differences on our southern border without a change in asylum? To his credit, to my question, he answered, we need to reform asylum from top to bottom. I mean, that was a clear statement from the administration. We need a policy change. We need to change how we actually do that. That was actually the clearest statement that he's made on all these issues he actually made to me in that hearing last week. So it's very important we hold the administration to their word, that we don't just say, here's some dollars, go figure it out, that we actually change the process of how we do asylum, that we actually can clamp down on this so that we have people that are, everyone knows, are not actually eligible for asylum. We're not releasing those folks in the country, especially knowing we've had 70,000 people just in the last 2 years this administration identified as what they call special interest aliens. They're coming from areas of known terrorism. We had no information about them. This administration, instead of detaining them, released them. If even 1% of those have a terror connection, that's 700 terrorists in our country right now that this administration just allowed to roam wherever they want. That's a huge national security risk.
And Americans are focused on this issue. They want a secure border. It's especially come to light in the midst of the Israel-Hamas war. I'm sure you've seen the anti-Israel protesters. They've been tearing down posters of hostages still being held by Hamas in Gaza. By the way, the White House was asked about it at a press briefing earlier this week. Listen to how Karine Jean-Pierre responded.
Should be condemned, the pulling down of them, or that that's a form of peaceful protest?
Look, I've sort of kind of seen the reporting here and there. I think it was from last week,
There's
right?
been like 30 million videos that have gone around.
No, I know, I hear you. I hear you. I'm just not going to. I'm not going to.
Is that peaceful protest to pull that down, or should you not be doing
I'm just
that?
not going to go into specifics on that particular thing. What I can say, there are real violent protests and threats that are happening right now. And senior administration officials are aware of these reports, which are deeply concerning.
So that didn't satisfy the American public, and you'd understand why. She did later send out a tweet to fully condemn these actions. But what do you make of the hesitancy she shared earlier on in the initial response? What does that tell you about how this administration views this anti-Israel sentiment we've seen?
Yeah, well, it reminds us all again of where the Democrat Party is. The Democrat Party is very conflicted. We've got some folks that are pro-Israel and a lot of folks that are pro-Hamas and Palestinian efforts here to be able to overthrow Israel and actually wipe them out from the river to the sea. When we've got members of Congress that are Democrat members of Congress chanting from the river to the sea, that means driving out all Jews, slaughtering Jews, and making sure that they're not there. When the administration hesitates, when they're saying, hey, we may think it's a peaceful protest, we don't really know yet, on people tearing down posters of hostages. Those are individuals saying, I don't care about hostages. I want to have the destruction of Israel. That's the clear representation. And when you have, by the way, universities that violates their own rules as a university to be able to have that kind of action, the destruction of other students' property on that, or destruction of other people's free right to be able to express their opinions, that violates most every one of those schools' policies, and the schools do nothing about it. It reminds you again where the leadership of that school is, that they're kind of quietly anti-Semitic and pushing out saying, hey, that this is okay to be able to do this, to attack because they're Jewish. Hey, this is a huge issue for us. We should speak up for the rights of every individual to be able to live out their faith, to have protected faith, and the right of Israel to be a sovereign nation and to protect its own borders from terrorism.
Many Democrats and almost all Republicans have done so. Senator, if I can turn to elections with you for a moment, obviously a major night last night for debate for Republican hopefuls for president of 2024. There was an outspoken moment by presidential hopeful Vivek Ramaswamy calling out your party, sir, saying that the Republican Party is a party of losers. He goes on to hit the RNC, saying that they're responsible again for losses in 2017, in 2018, 2020, 2022, again losing Congress again. And then also you've seen the past previous nights, there were losses in Virginia that we thought would be bellwethers for Republicans. Do you share that sentiment? Do you have any thoughts on the RNC and how they're handling these campaigns throughout these past several years?
Yeah, I would tell you, we'll watch and see through actually the presidential election who's winning, who's losing at the end of all this. But the key aspect of this is going to be every single candidate brings a set of ideas. They've got to present those ideas. They've got to engage. And so to be able to blame a national party to say that you've not taken care of a local state race in Virginia is a little absurd, to be able to say the least. Every single person rises and falls based on what's actually happening in that area. And people don't want to admit it. Washington, D.C. and what's happening in elections is actually a mirror to the country. We are this divided as a country. It's not just that Washington, D.C. is fighting or that there's disagreements here. This is who we are as a nation. And so the first challenge is not about how we're voting. The first challenge is who are we? Who are we going to be? And what does that actually look like? And all these ideas, and is this attitude and is who we are representative of the people around us? If it's not, it's our job to be able to win people over, not just to be able to attack people. So I'm very focused on how do you add people rather than how do you divide and how do you push people away. As far as I can tell, elections are about addition and multiplication, not about division.
You got less than a year to do so. Republicans, I'm speaking generally here. Of course, if you want to add more supporters, got to find a way to reach out to those undecided voters. Senator James Lankford, thank you so much, sir, for joining us today.